Hi, and welcome back to the Lady Landlords podcast. Today, we have a special member spotlight. So, Femi, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, if you have not met Femi before, Femi is actually one of our members that regularly attends the Lady Landlords Virtual Meetups. So, Femi is in a completely different state on the other side of the country from me. And we've been able to connect, and she's been able to really get some great advice and help from the women in that group. And it has completely changed the trajectory of her real estate portfolio. So I'm really, really excited to be able to share with you what Femi is working on. So, Femi, just start us off here by just sharing a little bit about you, the woman behind this portfolio here.
Yeah. I was originally born in Nigeria, lived there for a couple of years still as a kid, and then moved to Canada, stayed there for a couple of years there too, and then moved to Texas. And I've been in Texas now since 2001. I
Yeah.
am still employed with a W-2, so this is a new thing for me. And I'm a director at a company, a medical device company, where I'm in a finance function and enjoy finance a lot. So that's one of the aspects maybe we'll talk about that I really enjoy about real estate is all the numbers.
Which is good too, because that's something that not everybody else listening to this is going to be gets excited for the numbers.
Yeah.
So that is really kind of cool. I will ask you about that as we kind of move along here. So,
Mhm.
but here you have this very, professional sounding job here. You work in finance, you have this W-2. That sounds like you're kind of set, right? What made you then decide, like, hey, I do want to take on real estate investing? Where did this idea even come from for you?
I think for me personally, the pandemic was very enlightening because you
Mhm.
kind of got into, a cycle of things where it got a little stale and you realized that there wasn't much to do outside of work and like, sit on the couch and think about work or whatever. And one of the things that I kind of came to realization was that like I'm working and I'm going to work next year and I'm going to work the year after that and I'm going to work the year after that and so on and so forth. And I wanted to make sure that I was thinking about what my 10-year outlook looked like, what my 15-year outlook looked like, all of that. And then another thing that also happened is my dad actually got really sick during the quarantine, not related to COVID, but just got really sick on other reasons. And as I was kind of talking to him and trying to figure out, okay, when are you retiring? Like you're getting up there, when are you retiring? We kind of got into his finances and I realized that he had invested a lot of money into myself, my older sister, my younger brother, our education and things of that nature, and basically
Mhm.
completed all of his savings. And it was really big to me to give that back. And I very clearly could tell from my career path that that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. I couldn't fund two grown adults with what I was doing. So I needed another stream of income, something else to look into to make that move a little bit faster and just be a little bit more intentional with how I was growing my wealth.
I love that you really thought about that kind of that long-term plan.
Mhm.
Not just, what do you want to have happen tomorrow, but what would you like to see kind of moving forward? And you really kind of thought out in the future with that. And then also, I clearly think that's fantastic that you said, hey, my parents really helped me out. I want to make sure to kind of give back. Really, what I heard when you said about how your father like kind of depleted his savings, taking care of kids, I was just like, okay, so like no kids is is let's check the
Right,
box there for financial advice.
right.
But no, I mean, I've heard kids are expensive, so it kind of makes sense, right? So I think that's really beautiful. I love that you thought about kind of that goal and you really kind of planned ahead, and then you kind of broke it down into what do you kind of need to be doing now in order to make those things happen.
Mhm.
Now, what there's same thing. There still were other ways that you could either make extra money, that you could have created some other type of business. What made you say real estate was the way that you wanted to go?
And they are, and I tried all of them. I think, well, not all of them. I definitely got into, index funds and started a little like what they call the rolling average kind of investing process where I put a certain amount each month away. I did that, and I
Mhm.
was like, it's going to be slow. I did a little crypto also, invested a little bit in crypto, and I was like, this is going to be volatile. And then I started looking into real estate, and I think the thing that really got me with real estate is the power of leverage, is the fact that I
Yeah.
could come in with a smaller amount of money than the actual asset and still be able to afford it. So that was really huge for me, because essentially the way I took it was like, I'm going to take whatever, money I've piled up and saved, and I want to grow it at the fastest rate I can. And
Yeah.
leverage really, like, it just rang true to me that I can take, $10,000 and buy $100,000 house. What?
That's
you can't do that with stocks and crypto or anything like that.
no.
Right?
That's really interesting, because actually, similarly, my husband and I had a conversation with our financial advisor, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and kind of same thing. Like, he kind of like wrote out, I will never forget, like, this piece of paper where he was like, hey, so if you want to invest in stocks, like, it costs you $1 to buy $1 of stocks.
Mm-hmm.
But if you invest in real estate, like, it'll cost you, $20,000 to get a $500,000 house.
Exactly.
And it was just like, wow, like, okay, I'm getting the value of this larger asset at like a discounted rate. And there was really kind of nothing else that does that. If any of our listeners know of anything else that allows you to put down very small amount of money and get the full benefit of an asset, please feel free to write me a message. I would love to hear from you. So I love that you really kind of saw that and said, okay, this is now the way that I'm going to move forward. So just so all of our listeners know, this is now pandemic. So we're talking a year ago, like about a year and a half ago, when this,
I would say even like the latter half of the pandemic. So like latter half of 2020.
All right. So less than a year ago, you decide, cool, I'm going to invest in real estate. Now, just to be clear for all of our listeners, you've never owned real estate before, right? You had not read books, you'd not taken courses, you had not involved yourself in anything, but you were like, okay, that's it. This is the strategy I'm going to start looking into, right? Everybody has to start from zero, so you were in that boat where now you were like, okay, now I want to start. So what did you do to kind of start educating yourself?
Oh, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books and a lot of podcasts. And when I say read books, I'm all audible, because I don't listen to a lot of things, but basically just became obsessed with it. Just and then one of the things I also did to make it more real, because you read things, you hear things, it's still a little not fully tangible there. But I started just going to showings. I just go to a home showing and just kind of see what houses look like. I mean, I currently live in an apartment. I don't even own a home, so I'm really far from it. But just going to showings and just trying to get around, get more involved in the real estate environment. And actually, the first meetup I ended up attending was Lady Landlords, and that was my first instance being around other similar-minded women who wanted to get into this, and that was huge for me.
I love that. So I have to ask this: what for you then was the turning point where you said, you know what, I'm going to sign up to attend the Lady Landlords Virtual Meetup and go meet some strangers on a Zoom call? What made you say, you know what, this is what I want to do with my time tonight?
I was reading some self-development like blogs or podcasts, and such. And they basically said, you need to surround yourself with the people that you want to be. So in the middle of the quarantine, you really can't go meet with anybody. And I've never done a meetup before. This is my first ever meetup too. But I was just like, let me just put the money down. Let me just meet some people and we'll see what we get out of it. Like I didn't know what to expect per se, but it was just like, I need to surround myself with people who are on the same path that I am. And this is an opportunity. Let me try it out.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you ended up joining us, because I know that it was your first meetup. That it sounded like you had learned a lot and got some great advice. Can you tell me a little bit about the conversation that you had, and if you remember that member's name, so we can give her a little shout out?
I don't remember her name, no. I have it in my notes somewhere. I have it in my notes somewhere. All I know is she's from Canada, and she had several properties, and at the time she was converting one of her properties into a duplex. And I had her in one of the breakout rooms, and I mean, she was just expressing kind of her story about how she picked up real estate and how it would happen to be happenstance at first, and eventually
Danielle.
Maybe that sounds right. Yes, I think it's Danielle. Okay. How it happened to be happenstance at first, and how she got a little bit more focused in the end. And now that she was being intentional, she's now converting single family homes to duplexes. And at that time, I was everywhere. Like my mind was like, do I do this? Do I do that? What kind of property am I buying? Where am I at? And she just helped like focus me. She just helped me focus. She's like, it was like single family versus duplex. She's like, if I could do it again, I would do a duplex. And here's all the reasons why, and it was very valid. When it
Mhm.
came to creative financing, she helped focus me. Cause I'm like, well, I could try and, put it all down myself and then just be broke for like months or whatever like that. And she was just like, well, here's what I recently did to get other OPM, other people's money. And here's the process I had to go through mentally to get comfortable with that. So it was a lot of ideas that I had bouncing around from listening to 1,000,001 podcasts and books and all that stuff. She helped
Yeah.
us kind of shrink that in and made it a little bit more directional, like focus here, don't jump around everywhere. Those could all be right too, but you just start with one. So that
Well,
was
and
huge.
that is something that like I feel like we have in like this industry. Like there are so many different ways that you can make money through real estate. There are tons of different ways. So what we have to do then is figure out which is the best way for us. And
Mhm.
I really, that's what I love that you went and you did your 10, 15-year plan, because you can take that plan and then say like, okay, well, based on that plan, this strategy is going to be the best fit for me. This is the way that I would necessarily want to go. And then you kind of like, yeah, you can listen to all those other ideas and what everybody else is doing, but you need to be like, cool, this is what I am working on. You have to stay very focused on just your kind of niche here. So okay, so now you were on the call, you
Mhm.
end up coming up with like much more of like a plan. You seem like now you're like, okay, I know what I want. Now, when you get off that call, what do you go and do?
I went and found 1,000,001 wholesalers. I think there was a realization also that the MLS wasn't going to be it for me at that point in time. And I just
Mhm.
started networking some more. And I felt leaving that meetup, I felt like I got so much value just meeting with other people and I got a lot of confidence there. So I went and I got on Craigslist, I got into all the Facebook marketplace, and I'm just responding back to anybody who posts about any kind of property and just trying to get on their list and trying to get in the know. And I ended up meeting a wholesaler out in San Antonio that it just clicked. It worked. Actually, I ended up meeting one in Dallas first that clicked even better. She was the
Okay.
one that actually helped me pull the trigger, but things fell apart with that wholesaler just because it was a short sale. But
Okay.
the one in she helped me pull the trigger. Then it was very easy to follow up in San Antonio after that.
Gotcha. So, and you did this all virtually, right?
All virtually. Yeah.
Exactly. I want to make sure that our ladies know that really this is what the one benefit that I found that like I feel like you can kind of see from this pandemic is that so much has moved virtual that there's not really a roadblock being like, oh, well, I want to buy over here, but I can't do it because I live over here. Now, like it even makes this even easier to be able to network. It sounds like you were able to find like most of these connections just by like hanging around some of the different Facebook groups
Yep.
and just reaching out to some people and going from that perspective. So I
Exactly.
love that you did it all virtually. So for our listeners that are not familiar with a wholesaler, feel free to go back and listen to our other podcast episodes. We do have episodes that go through what exactly wholesalers are, how they work, and those types of things. But basically, they are your people kind of going out there, identifying properties for you, and then bringing them to you. You then end up buying the property, and then they basically make a commission more or less from finding you the deal. So now you have this wholesaler in San Antonio.
Mhm.
What happens next?
I give him my criteria. I'm like, I want duplexes. Here's my price range. And then here's my general area. And he sent me first property and it was perfect. It was
The first
perfect.
one?
Yeah, the first one. Well, it was the first one. Well, no, she was the second one. I lied. The first one, I completely I responded back too late and it was gone. But the second
Okay.
one was perfect. It was perfect. And what made me confident, especially when you talk about the virtual world, is that he was able to actually go into the property and record as much as possible and give me a good feel of not only the tenants that were currently in there, but just like how they're moving about, the setup, things of that nature, and make me feel like I'm not getting disaster tenants. One, the property is in decent shape, people can live there, so it's not like torn up terribly. And I got
Mhm.
a feel of what kind of work I would need to do also. So that was huge. So after I saw that, I immediately jumped on it. I was like, let's go, let's do this. Um, and then I was like, okay, let me go find a lender. Like the best lender ever. They were able to give me really great rates, where they would actually give you 100% of the price that you were paying, as long as the ARV was higher than that, and you can get 75% up of ARV, so the after repair value. And
Mhm.
so essentially it meant that, and then once it appraised that property, so I bought it for 140 and it appraised
Mhm.
at 218. So essentially
It's
at that
amazing.
point, I had nothing to bring really to the close except for some of the other fees and stuff like that. So I ended up putting down for that property in particular about 13,000 for closing.
Okay, so we're gonna break this down here. So you were able to buy this property for $13,000 out of pocket, correct?
Mhm.
Nice, amazing deal.
I know.
And this is the property, like you said, was worth a little over 200,000. So that
Yeah.
already, that's fantastic. So let's break down a little bit of what you said here. So you've now found this property through this wholesaler, and it fit the criteria that you gave him. So
Mhm.
great job by that wholesaler. That does not always happen. So I'm glad you got that. Then you said you contacted a lender.
Mhm.
So what type of lender did you decide to use?
I decided to use a hard money lender because I really wanted to try the BRRRR strategy, which
Okay.
would allow me to scale. Because as you mentioned, I had my plan, and then it
Uh-huh.
involved scaling because I want my dad to retire sooner rather than later.
Aw.
So it involves scaling. So I wanted to try the BRRRR strategy and put as little down as possible so that way I can kind of keep moving forward. And then the other thing that was important to me was having a lender that could walk me through like the last part of BRRRR, which is the refinancing portion. So this
Yeah.
lender was great because they actually have a BRRRR like package where they basically
Oh, cool.
they help you with your loan, they help you on the loan for the rehab also, and then they make sure you're qualified for a refinancing before you even go into the deal. And then if you want to, you can refinance with them, and there's no seasoning period where you have to wait a certain amount of months after purchase. You can just do it whenever you're done with the rehab.
That's great. Now, why for this particular property did you choose to use a hard money lender rather than a traditional mortgage?
Well, with the wholesaler also, there was a close date and it was like 2 weeks. So with a traditional bank, that
Mhm.
it takes at least 30 days.
But
And even right
not.
now, it's even more backed up because appraisers are, a dime a dozen at this point. So it was really important that I move fast with the deal and close really quickly. And a hard money loan, they can close in within 7 days, 10 days, pretty easily.
Exactly. So really the main reason that you, in this situation, that you used the hard money lender was because you needed a quick close.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. And for any of our listeners that are not familiar with hard money lenders, you can also listen to our episode about hard money lending with Michael Haberman, and he walks you through really what that process would look like. So, so make sure to go back and take a listen to that episode if you're interested in using a hard money lender yourself. So, okay, so now you got this, now you got that property, you now found your funding.
Mhm.
Now, one of the other things that you had mentioned was the property was the sale price was 140.
Mhm.
And it appraised for over $200,000. But there was no work really to kind of be done at that point in time. So can you share a little bit about why the price was so low when it was worth more?
Okay, so there was some work, so I'll add that in there. There was a little bit
Okay.
of roof and foundation that we're going through. The other piece is that the rents were severely under market. I mean, so just to give you a little bit of flavor, it's a 2-1 on one side and a 1-1 on the other side. The 1-1 was paying $300 a month, and and this is San Antonio. This is like a major metroplex, so not even close. The one was paying $300 a month, and the 2-1 was paying $350. So
Oh my God. Oh my God. My New York mind is blown. That is insane.
so that was part of what was in the equation for the pricing was that, and these were the tenants that have been here for a very long time.
I would never move either if my
No, I
rent
would
was
never.
$350 for a 2-bedroom. I would
Exactly.
never move.
Exactly. So that was part of what was bought into the deal was that I was coming in with inherited tenants, low price, and then a couple of structural things as far as like the roof and the foundation to fix in.
Okay, so you would have those larger kind of CapEx projects and then lower rents. So
Yeah.
that's why the sale price was so much lower.
Yeah.
And and it sounds like the seller was perfectly happy with that because he knew that no investor would come in, as an investment property making, your $500 a month here. So, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, okay, so that when was the discrepancy with then why it appraised for so much more.
Mhm.
Got it. So so then now you said that really the only money that you had to pay was for closing costs and some of the extra kind of fees that were around it.
Yeah,
So that's how you ended up only coming out of pocket $13,000.
exactly. Mhm.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So did you end up keeping the tenants?
So I'm keeping one of them and not the other.
Okay.
I'm bumping them up slowly, but the way that it works out is that we're going to do a little bit of rehab on the exterior, and then for the one tenant that's moving out, we're going to do some rehab on the interior so we can raise the rents pretty significantly. But the plan basically is just to generally raise their rents up over time, and because they're so under market, any slight raise they're generally accepting of, because they're not going to get that same price anywhere else. So
what would be market rent for those
so
properties?
on the 1-1, it would be 850, and then on the 2-1, it would be like 1,100. So very low. Yeah.
So even if you were like, hey, your rent's doubling to 600, it's still a steal for them.
And that's essentially what we did.
And they were very understanding,
Yeah.
and that conversation went well. And
Mhm.
okay, I'm happy to hear that. Good. And that's also great that you're keeping then one of them.
Mhm.
Does the other one know that you're not keeping them?
Yeah, they've
Okay.
already they're fine. They're moving out. They already bought a house, which I was like, or they've already signed for under contract for a house. They want to get their own place, so they're good. Mhm.
Well, they've been able to save for that down payment for years at $300 a month in rent. So sounds about right.
Mhm.
Well, good. Okay. So I'm glad that that one worked out so well. So you're going to kind of do some light rehab, which is also great that you don't have to do, especially for your first property, an entire gut rehab, right? So I feel like this is like tipping your toe into the construction in the BRRRR kind of place.
Mhm.
And it was interesting that you were able to do this BRRRR strategy by finding a property that just had a seller that was very motivated to have the low sale price rather than a dilapidated building with 1,000 headaches.
Yes,
So
exactly.
that's actually pretty neat. So now
Mhm.
you closed, and when did you close on that first property?
On the 15th of July,
Okay, of 2021.
2021. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. So just a couple months before now we're filming this episode.
Yeah.
So then what did you go and do next, Femi?
So the wholesaler was still sending me deals, and I was I was still eager, and I still had that energy around me, around like, okay, this is really cool. And he sent me this one deal, which was basically another duplex, not in exactly the same area, different part of San Antonio, but still in a very nice area. It was twice the size of the first one. Both units are 2-1 and a half bath. And then also both units had an attached garage. And that was
Oh,
priced
wow.
at 135. And I was like, there's no way this makes sense. There must be a lot of things wrong with it, which there was, but
Uh-huh.
it was such a great deal. So I completely called my lender, and I was like, what's the likelihood I could do both of these? And he's like, let me run numbers. I'm like, how fast can you run these numbers? And basically things worked out, and I went ahead and signed for that one. Kind of crazy, but
Absolutely crazy. Okay, so let's now break down this deal. So you said that it was 130 and
135.
135. Okay. And then what did that property appraise for?
That property it pays for 243.
That's like even better than the first one.
I know.
So, okay, same question. Why was the price so much lower on this one
Mhm.
than the appraisal?
The tenants were also under market, although the seller had agreed to raise their rents before the sale happened. So they were both paying 600 on both sides, and the seller had raised it to 750. So minor raise, but whatever. And then it did need some work. So this is what I would call a little bit of a handyman house. The previous
handyman special,
right?
right?
The previous owner had basically been the handyman and just fixed things here and there as needed. And some things you shouldn't fix on your own. Let's just say that. So there was a couple of things there, like there definitely needed a new roof, the foundation needed leveling. And then there was one of the units had been fully updated, and the other unit needed like new flooring, fixes in the kitchen and the plumbing. So a little bit, definitely a lot more work on this one. But with over 100K spread in the purchase price and the appraisal, I had room. I had all the room to do it. Yes.
Yes. And in this deal, I want to talk a little bit more also about the numbers on this one, because since the difference between the sale price and the appraisal was so great, that actually gave you the money and the funds for your rehab. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Can you walk us through how you ended up with the money for the rehab by buying a house? Usually when you end up buying a house, you don't get money to also do that rehab. So walk our listeners through that for me.
So I guess this is all BRRRR still. So still the buy rehab rent, refinance, if I'm doing that right. I think I messed up, repeat. I'm like, there's one more R, repeat.
Yep.
But essentially what happens with that spread that I mentioned, so buying it at 135 when it's worth 243, is that if I refinance it, then I would only owe like a 25% or 20% of the ARV.
Mhm.
That basically gave me, if I'm doing my math right, around like maybe like 50 or 60K that I would have needed to put down if I had just bought this property on the street. So if it was on MLS and I was going to, go to the bank and just get it from a regular bank, I would need to put 25% down on this property, which is around over 50, 60K. So essentially, because I have over a 100K spread, that difference between the 50K that I would normally have to pay and the other 50K that is just equity, I can spend on rehab. And I can set on fixing the property and getting that ready, and knowing that once I refinance, I'll get all my money back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes that just amazing. Now you get your money back, and now you can go and buy your next property, right?
Exactly.
So how much did then this second property cost you out of pocket?
So out of pocket for closing, it was only 8K. And it's crazy.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. And then for the rehab, which we just started this last week, or I guess this weekend is what we started. Right now, our estimate is about 45K with about, and I'm adding on top of that. So that's not including this number, but I have about 10% contingency just for anything that pops up, since it's a bigger overhaul.
Always make sure contractors are always go over budget and over deadlines. So yeah, always make sure to kind of plan for that. So, okay. So then this one really less than $10,000 out of pocket for closing costs to really get that into the second property. And when did you close on the second property?
I closed on that one like 10 days after the first.
So also July 2021.
So it was like July 30th. I think it was like the last day of the month. Cause I remember panicking because I was like, I need to get the tenants information so I can get rent from them, because I don't want them to pay the old owner. So yeah, it was like the last day of the month. So 2021, 2 properties, 4 doors.
Amazing. Amazing. This is why I so needed you to share this story with the ladies, because this is just so inspiring. Now, so now on the second property, same question. Did you keep both tenants?
I did. And I keep both tenants, and it ended up being a family duo, like a mother on one side and her daughter, and daughters on the other side. So it's actually working out perfectly, because with the rehab, they're actually just going to move over and then move over. So I can kind of make that happen. And I'm giving them a discount with the rent to help with that. But they're excited about all the new things they're going to have in the apartment too.
Of course. They're probably really happy that someone's coming in and fixing these things that they've always wanted. Because remember, when we rent our properties, it is our tenant's home. It's our house, but it's their home. Yeah. So they are excited for them to have some of those things in great working order and updates and all those types of things. So and that's great that you can actually still be making money while doing the rehab, right? It's not like, oh man, now I have all these carrying costs because I'm going to have this empty property here, and empty maybe on both sides. You actually have tenants that you were creatively able to find a way to keep them, still get paid while then doing the work.
Exactly.
The fact that it was the mother daughters that's just amazing. How cool that worked out that way.
I know, it's kind of crazy, but I'm like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
That's so cool. Congratulations on the success, just because the way that you were able to think outside the box, get these deals done so quickly. I mean, now here we're talking, it's a month later. I mean, you have still, these are brand new properties. So that's just really kind of cool to hear what you've been able to do. And I think when you had that conversation in the virtual meetup, that was probably only a month or 2 before that. I want to say that was just early summer when we met.
Yeah, but they set a fire on my ass, because I was just like, okay,
good.
I see all these women, they're all great in their own ways, and they're doing what they want to do. And it was very inspirational, honestly. And even to see people who you could tell that maybe they're doing things, but they're not sure what they're doing yet. Like, they have a property, they don't know what they're doing yet, but they're not broke on the streets. They haven't been foreclosed on. So it was inspiring to see people at the different stages of property ownership, and see them be successful no matter what, and knowing that, okay, I want to be one of these women, and I can be one of them.
And you are.
Thank you.
You are. I mean, you're doing it. This is amazing. One thing that I thought was interesting in both of the properties that you talked about was that they actually had structural issues, foundation issues. A lot of investors will hear those words. Like there's like little key words that like I feel like an investor is going to walk away from. But you heard as a brand new investor, hey, foundation issues, and you're like, great, I'll take it. So what made you decide that those were problems that you felt comfortable taking on?
So when I first started learning about investing, and I mentioned I would go to showings, I would had a realtor that would take me around and see different properties. I got to see what foundation problems could be. And some of them were pretty terrible. And you can visually see like, okay, this is a gut job, or this is whatever it is. So it gave me a better understanding of what foundation problems were minor and what a major amount of work to do. And that is what really mostly got me comfortable. It's like, okay, well, here's my range based on the properties I'm looking at and what it would look like if I was to have a foundation problems. And that's really what got me comfortable there. I wouldn't recommend this. I would say get an inspection if you can. With the wholesaling, it's hard. And then for the second one, I did have the general contractor at least go and look at the property to give me a thumbs up that, okay, this is good.
Yeah, like, okay, it has a structural problem, but it's not going to fall down tomorrow. Exactly. Right.
Exactly. Plus having tenants there makes it a little bit, it gives you a little more comfort. Like they've been there over 3 years or whatever like that. You can get a feel about whether the place is habitable based off of tenants existing in the property already.
Totally agree. That's actually something that over the past year, the properties that I've bought, I've actually wanted the house to come with tenants. And especially with eviction moratorium through this pandemic, a lot of people have just kind of thought that I was crazy for wanting that. But one of the reasons that I really wanted a place where people were going to be living there was because I know that everything is functioning. Yeah. And you know that the people, for the most part, are happy there, right? Okay. Yes, everybody can, even on our own personal homes, there's always something we can update or something we can improve. So there's definitely those situations. But what's nice is to be like, okay, like this place is actually up and running. Exactly. There's no, oh, well, now I have to fix this, or now a tenant's going to move in and then realize, my husband and I have had the worst luck on all of our properties because we always end up buying things during the summer. And then even though we check it, always come, October, September, when we turn the heat on, there's always a problem with our boiler. Every single time we bought a property, that ends up happening. Even though, once again, we check it, we have an inspector, everything, it always ends up kind of being a problem because it's just something that like if nobody was living there, they didn't know that was going to be a problem. Yeah, it worked for the first 5 minutes, but then all of a sudden it's an issue. So there is kind of a nicety of having people that already live there and are happy in the home. Exactly. So it sounds like that was also kind of a benefit for the properties you found. Exactly. So I like that. So now you have 2 properties, 4 doors, and it's, month 3 of your real estate investing career here. Yeah. What is next for you, Femi?
So right now I'm very focused on the rehab. So making sure that goes smoothly, and that I'm focusing on the rehab in the sense where I'm trying to build systems so that I can repeat this and not have to spend as much energy that I am on these first 2 in the future. So working, drawing up an SOW, getting that all signed. I'm going through change orders already right now, positive change orders. We found out that the foundation's going to cost less, which I didn't even know that's a thing. Nobody ever talks about a situation where you get a different quote and you're like, oh, it's going to be cheaper. So I'm like, okay, update the change.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. And just really going back to the process that I did earlier and reframing them and making that a process versus just things I was doing on the fly. Is my focus right now, but I'm hoping by the next 3 months, 4 months, I'll be fully refinanced out of both properties and be looking for my next deal, which hopefully will be a larger multifamily unit.
Okay. I would love to see that. I would love to see you get another large multifamily before the end of the year.
That'd be great.
Right?
That'd be
so
really
I think that's short-term goal for you here, Femi.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing I would say, I'll add on to that, is that I'm also trying to increase my network. So I'm currently based in Dallas and my properties are in San Antonio. So it is a long distance and I've never seen these properties and all of that jazz. But I want to make sure I'm increasing my networks there so I can also get better deal flow, potentially, so that if I am looking for something that's a little bit more commercial in nature, I'll actually have ears on the ground to help me out. So trying to work through that a little bit there too.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And once again, that's kind of the next natural step is start networking, learn what other opportunities are out there, and keep working with that wholesaler that's brought you 2 great properties so far. Now, was there ever a point in purchasing these 2 houses, and I know the answer to this question, but I'm still going to ask it. Was there any point in that whole process that you were like, oh my God, this sucks, this is miserable, I don't want to do this anymore, I hate real estate investing?
Yes. Like there definitely was. I mean, for me, there was a lot of anxiety around what the rehab would be. And as I mentioned, I'm buying these properties virtual. I've never stepped foot in them. And my goal is to never have to. So as a new investor going in, I'm just like, there's a little bit of leap of faith happening here. A little bit to a lot of it, leap of faith. And there's so many times where like I would, especially after I bought the properties and I asked the tenants to give me a list of things that need to be fixed. And then especially on the second one, they just started listing stuff. They sent me videos of like chipmunks with holes in the ceiling, like all kinds of stuff that I was just like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? And then also as you go through BRRRR, you start realizing there's some aspects of it that maybe, I'm sure they communicated this, but I just, heard what I wanted to hear. But you do have to have a lot of cash that you can put down kind of up front before you can refinance. So then you start calculating everything. You're like, oh my God, is this going to change my lifestyle? Like, what am I going to do? What if I have a big, find another issue? So there's a lot of like unknowns that kept me up a little bit. But if anything, my mindset has just been like, this is a learning opportunity. My first 2 properties are not going to be my best properties. I'm probably going to leave some cash on the table, even though I'm trying to BRRRR and walk away with all of my money. But I'm going to learn so much. And as I mentioned, I've talked to other women who have gone through this and made other mistakes and been just fine. Like if I look at this long range, I will not regret this decision. So, deal with it. Drive my boyfriend crazy, complaining and crying and move on.
But what's really important is that you actually got involved. You actually bought properties. You weren't sitting there being like, well, there might be a problem here. Or, hey, there might be a problem here. You said, okay, like I understand that it's not going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. There are going to be problems, but it's still better to do something than to do nothing.
Exactly. And that really was what it was. It's like, if I don't get in, that's why I even started going to showings first, started going to see properties first. It's like, I need to get in and physically be doing things, because it's one thing to stress about a problem that's like so far away. It's not real. It's not like tangible, sorry. And another thing to be like, okay, this is my problem right in front of me. And then I have to problem solve what it actually is, not all of the phantoms it could potentially be, right? It makes it a little bit easier to focus on one problem versus like all the potentials.
Of course. And want to hear a little secret, Femi? There are always problems in real estate. And even if it is your 100th house, there will still be some issue that's going to come up that you're like, there's a chipmunk living in there. Okay. Or what do we do with this problem? Or, hey, this foundation problem is a bigger problem than we thought. There will always be something. It does not matter how many properties that you have or how experienced you are. There's still going to be something that's going to come up and be like, oh, I got to deal with this now. Was not expecting that, but okay, I guess this is what we got to go with.
Yep.
So I will give you a heads up on that. That yes, you can have better responses. You will be able to mitigate things much easier moving forward. But there's still going to be something fun and new coming at you all the time.
That's good. I like diversity in life, so that's good.
Then you pick the right place to invest. So thank you so much for walking us through your deals. I appreciate it. Good luck on the next one. You'll have to come back and let us know when you get the next property and what that looks like. And we'll have to have you back on here so you can fill us in on those numbers. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Hopefully it's a commercial multi-unit. We'll see, but hopefully.
Put it out in the universe.
Yes, exactly. I say it now. Now you guys heard me say it. Now I have to do it.
No, exactly. And by 2022, I love it.
Exactly.
Well, Femi, thank you very much for coming on. For any of our listeners that are interested, we always have our virtual meetup on the 4th Thursday of every month. So you can find the information out for that in the Lady Landlords Facebook group. And for anybody else that is interested in being able to grow their portfolio, and if you need a little extra assistance, please consider the Lady Landlords Mentorship program. I will put the information down in the notes so that way you can get help creating a plan just like Femi has. Thank you very much. And I'll see you all next week for our next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast.